And here we go. Okay, here we go. Let me just move people down there. Okie dokie. All right, so last time we had ended by reading the Mishnah, and I just want to start today by reading the Mishnah. So it's page 60 of the Koran PDF, or it is Baba Batra 11a, if you're looking at some other source. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam shekidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So we're talking about the first Mishnah a long time ago, talked about co-owners of property and dividing the property with a partition for whatever reason. So, and how we can, whether the court can impose on the one partner, the one co-owner who doesn't want to share in the cost of the partition, whether the court can order that partner to do that. So now it continues with this dividing the something. So the court does not divide a courtyard at the request of one of the joint owners unless there will be in it 4 by 4 cubits for this one and 4 by 4 cubits for that one. That is this minimum area for each of the joint owners. All right, so a court doesn't get involved in a dispute like this unless the property that would be divided would end up being large enough to meet this minimum area requirement. Okay, anything smaller than that, court doesn't get involved. And the court does not divide a jointly owned field unless there is space in it to plant 9 kav of seed for this one and 9 kav of seed for that one. And we read the background, and it's not really helpful in the background to explain how much of an area that is. But again, there's a minimum area requirement for the court to get involved. Rabbi Yehuda says the court does not divide a field unless there is space in it. Just 1 second, make sure I admitted. Where's the participants? Yes, okay. Just a second here. Okay. Rabbi Yehuda says the court does not divide a field unless there's space in it to plant 9 half kav of seed for this one and 9 half kav of seed for that one. Okay, so the dispute between the minority, Rabbi Yehuda, and the majority is over the size of a field, the minimum size of the field. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda says court can get involved for a smaller size field than the rabbis say. And the court does not divide a jointly owned garden unless there is space in it to plant a half kav of seed for this one and a half kav of seed for that one. Rabbi Akiva says that half that amount is sufficient, that is the area required for sowing a quarter kav of seed. Okay, so again, there's dispute about the size, the minimum size of a garden. Similarly, the court does not divide a hall. Okay, and here's a picture of a hall on the, where, I'm not sure where Steinsaltz got this picture from, but this is what a triclinium looks like. A triclinium in Latin for terraklin, which is the Hebrew word, which is the Greek triklinion, which was a room with 3 couches. Triclinium, I guess. So tri for 3. The term later came to refer any large space for entertaining guests. So I remember being in the town of Tzipori in northern Israel that has beautiful archaeological discoveries there, lots of mosaics. It was this town in which Romans and Jews lived together. And in one of the houses, the villas, that was, the mosaic floor was uncovered. There was like marking on the floor in the mosaic as to where the couches are supposed to go. And so that's pretty cool that you can figure out, just on the floor markings, that this is what a triclinium or a trocline looked like. So big enough for 3 couches in it, like that. So similarly, the court does not divide a hall, a drawing room, a dovecote, a cloak, a bathhouse, an olive press, and an irrigated field unless there's enough for this one to use the property in the usual manner and enough for that one to use the property in the usual manner. Okay, so dividing a bathhouse, it's got to be enough room for both of them to use it as a bathhouse. Divide a cloak, there has to be enough of them when you cut this garment in half that it could still be a cloak for either one. Okay, and I don't know how you divide an olive press, that either one can use his half of the olive press as an olive press. I mean, I picture an olive press as a circle. So is a semicircle of an olive press enough to press olives? I have no idea. Okay, and a drawing room too. If you put a partition down the middle of a room, is it still big enough for both people to entertain? This is the principle. Anything for which, when it is divided, each of the parts is large enough to retain the name of the original item, the court divides it. But if the parts will not retain the original name, the court does not divide it, right? So if you divide a dovecote so that then it's not big enough to be a dovecote anymore, it could be something that could house some birds, but not big enough for a dovecote, then you can't divide it and still maintain it as a dovecote for both owners. When does this rule apply? It applies when the joint owners do not both wish to divide the item. When only one of the owners wishes to divide the property, he cannot force the other to do so. But when both of them wish to divide the item, they may divide it even if each of the owners will receive less than the amounts specified above, right? So that makes sense too. Why get the court involved if both co-owners agree? And then size doesn't matter. If they agree to divide, then they divide. But in the case of sacred writings, that is, a scroll of any of the 24 books of the Bible that were inherited by 2 people, they may not divide them, even if both of them wish to do so, because it would be a show of disrespect to cut the scroll in half. Okay, so even if co-owners agree to divide property, one piece of property that they're not allowed to divide is a holy scroll. That is a scroll with books of the Bible written on it. That you just can't divide. And they have to figure out instead how they're going to co-own a scroll. So we'll see how the Gemara comments on this whole Mishnah. Okay, so first it is so it's courtyard, then it is a field for planting seed, then it is a garden. Okay, courtyard, field, garden, then it's property, and then it's a holy scroll. Okay, and this is also, by the way, what a dovecote looks like. So it's kind of hard to divide a dovecote like this in half, but maybe it's possible. Go inside and put partition down the middle here, and there's still enough room there for the birds to get in. Okay. So now we go to the Gemara. Yes, go ahead, Steve. Yes.
Kind of a general question. We may have covered this in the past. So the Talmud occurred during a certain time period. They talk about, a court making these decisions.
Yeah.
How long did these courts exist into, medieval times? Were they there in the shtetls in Eastern Europe?
Yes. Yes. So even in some tight-knit, ultra-Orthodox communities today, there are these so-called courts, tribunals, that is, Beit Din, that 2 parties to an issue Mainly, it could be about a contract or some other kind of small civil dispute that a Beit Din could be convened to take care of it. So Jewish communities throughout throughout history, from Mishnaic times until today, still exist to talk about some of these issues, not all of these issues, because when it comes to property, I mean, in America, people wouldn't really go, well, when it comes to land or real estate, you wouldn't really go to a Beit Din to handle real estate disputes. You'd go to, that would be handled in a regular court of law. Now, but granted, we live in an unusual time, and we might take it for granted being Jews in America. We might not think it's an unusual time, and we take it for granted almost 250 years of being in America that life has been good for Jews. But in broader Jewish history, there's always been a fear of Gentile courts, and that you really, throughout history, in medieval Europe especially, you wanted to stay far away from Gentile courts as possible, because there was just fear, fear of what the court might do to the Jew, could execute a Jew for just the smallest thing, or could fine exorbitantly the Jews for coming to court. You just want to stay away from them. And that's not necessarily an issue in American courts regarding Jews who come to court. Certainly, we know of courts in the South extremely racist, bigoted against blacks, but would it have been the same about Jews? Well, it depends. So for the most part, I think Jews have been okay regarding American courts of law. So, but throughout history, yes, Jewish communities, even in the shtetl, in the ghetto, had their own courts of law to take care of civil matters, not to take care of capital crimes. That they knew. Somebody got killed in the ghetto, Gentile courts are going to be involved in that, and then the Jewish community would be mourning over what would happen then. Okay, so the Gemara now. Rabbi Asi says that Rabbi Yochanan says, the 4 cubits of the courtyard, which they said each of the joint owners must receive, is in addition to the space in front of the entrances to each of the houses that is assigned to the owner of the house for loading and unloading. Okay, so here's a picture. And so according to Rav Chisda, which we haven't gotten to yet, whose opinion was accepted as the halacha, a courtyard is divided equally between its joint owners, with the exception of an area of 4 cubits in front of each entrance to a house, which is given to the owner of that house. Okay? So, space afforded each neighbor in front of his doorway. So, in other words, so there's the courtyard, I think, is this area here, the green space in front of these 2 houses, and then you need separate space, not included in the divided space, that it would be enough for loading and unloading. Okay, so 4 cubits of the courtyard, which they said each of the joint owners must receive, is in addition to the space in front of the entrances to each of the houses that is assigned to the owner of the house for loading and unloading. That opinion is also taught in a Baraita. The court does not divide a courtyard unless its area is sufficient so that there will be in it 8 cubits for this one and 8 cubits for that one. The Gemara asks, but didn't we learn in the Mishnah that it suffices that there be 4 cubits for this one and 4 cubits for that one? Rather, conclude from it that the Baraita was taught in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Asi. The Gemara affirms, conclude from it that it is so. And there are those who raise the Baraita as a contradiction to what is taught in the Mishnah and use the previously mentioned point to reconcile the two texts. We learned in the Mishnah the court does not divide a courtyard at the request of one of the joint owners unless there will be in it 4 by 4 cubits for this one and 4 by 4 cubits for that one. But isn't it taught in a Baraita that a court does not divide a courtyard unless there are 8 cubits for this one and 8 cubits for that one? About this, Rabbi Yossi said that Rabbi Yochanan said the 4 cubits of the courtyard, which they said each of the joint owners must receive, is in addition to the space in front of the entrances to each of the houses. Okay. Further, with regard to the division of a courtyard, Rav Huna says a courtyard is divided according to its entrances. Each of the owners receives a share of the courtyard in proportion to the number of entrances that his house has opening onto the courtyard. And Rav Chisda says 4 cubits are allotted to each of the owners for each and every entrance, and the rest of the courtyard is then divided equally between them. So here's one big entrance here, and this is one smaller entrance. However, whatever the entrances are, that's however entrances each owner has access to, plus the 4 cubits that would be extra. Okay? The Gemara comments, it's taught in a Baraita, in accordance with the opinion of Rav Chisda, each of the entrances opening to a courtyard is allotted 4 cubits. If this one has one entrance, and that one has 2 entrances, the one who has 1 entrance takes 4 cubits, and the one who has 2 entrances takes 8 cubits, and they divide the rest of the courtyard equally between them. If this one had an entrance 8 cubits wide, he takes 8 cubits adjacent to the entrance and 4 cubits in the courtyard. The Gemara expresses surprise. What are these 4 cubits in the courtyard doing here? Doesn't it all depend on the size of the courtyard? Abaye said, this is what the Baraita is saying. For the entrance, he takes 8 cubits along the length of the courtyard and 4 cubits along the width of the courtyard. In other words, he takes a strip 4 cubits wide along the entire length of his entrance. Okay, it's kind of hard to picture these things without, at least I have a hard time picturing these things without a picture in front of me, but the idea is you have to have room in front of your entrance in addition to the courtyard the courtyard space being divided. Maimar says, a pit for holding animal food has 4 cubits on each and every side so that there will be sufficient space for the animals to stand. The Gemara adds, and we said this only when the pit has no special entrance to reach it, but rather it is accessed from all sides. So a pit for animal food, some commentaries explain that this passage refers to a father who left a courtyard to his sons, and the portion that one received contained a pit for holding animal food. Others suggest that the Gemara is referring to a case where the co-owners of a courtyard wish to divide the courtyard between themselves, and one of the owners has a pit for animal food. Several explanations have been offered for the expression pit for animal food. Rashi and others claim the phrase signifies a hole in the ground into which people cast date pits and served as animal food. The Geonim, that is, those are the rabbis after the time of the Talmud, before the medieval period. The Geonim explain that the pit held the lees left over from date beer. The Ramah maintains this pit was used to store substances used in the tanning of hides, and the space required alongside it was for unloading the hides. Okay, so they're not sure exactly what this animal food, because it's Aramaic, pera de souffle. Okay, so a pit for holding animal food. Okay, and the Gemara adds, and we said this only when the pit has no special entrance to reach it, but rather it's accessed from all sides. Okay, so Rashi explains that the owner of the pit does not have a special opening in his house through which he casts his date pits. Rather, he uses his regular door to go out to the courtyard, and from there, he makes his way to the pit. Other early commentaries understand that this refers to an entrance to the pit itself. This entrance is constructed for loading and unloading the refuse. So it's kind of like a compost pit, something like that. Okay. So we go on. But if he designates an entrance leading to his pit and does not approach it from all sides, he has 4 cubits only in front of his entrance. Okay, depends on where the pit is, how the pit's designed, where in the courtyard it is, in order for the owner to have access to it. Rav Huna says, a portico, so this is achsadra, a portico, just a second, from the Greek exedra, which refers to a covered entrance to a house. Okay, so a portico that opens onto a courtyard does not have the adjoining 4 cubits. The Gemara explains, what's the reason that 4 cubits were granted for each entrance? The 4 cubits were granted so that the owner would have room for unloading his animal of its burden. Here, he can go inside the portico and unload. It's like picturing like a carport. It's kind of hard for us to envision a courtyard because homes in America are not built this way. It's those of us who have been to Europe and have visited in older homes, like from the Middle Ages. Those homes, like there's a doorway on the street, but the doorway on the street then leads into a courtyard area of beyond which is the entrance to the home itself. So that's what we kind of have to picture here, that homes in ancient times and medieval times had these courtyards. It's only the wealthier people who might have a single home with a courtyard. Less wealthy people would have houses built around a courtyard so that there would be several owners of properties that shared a courtyard. So the issue, I guess, would be how to divide the courtyard so everybody would feel like they have their own kind of private courtyard area. And then there's the problem also of gaining access, possibly from the street, to be able to navigate between the courtyards to your own home. Okay, so and then what if somebody had a covered area in front of their house too? Okay, so what's the reason for that 4 cubits were granted for each entrance? The 4 cubits were granted so that the owner would have room for unloading his animal of its burden. Here he can go inside the portico and unload. Rav Sheshet raises an objection from a baraita. Both gates of houses and gates of porticos have the adjoining 4 cubits for unloading. The Gemara answers, when that baraita is taught, it is specifically with regard to the portico of a study hall, which is closed and not used for unloading burdens. The Gemara expresses surprise at this answer. It's obvious that this is the halacha governing the portico of a study hall, as it's a proper room. Rather, the baraita is referring to a Roman portico, which is more open than that portico of the study hall, but also not used for unloading. So I'm just looking for the note here. Oh, here we go. So this is a regular portico, according to Rashi and another commentator, Rabbeinu Gershom. So that's a regular portico. This is a portico of a study hall, according to Rashi, which kind of looks more enclosed and more private. And this is a Roman portico, according to Rashi. So this is still open. It just has like a 10 handbreadth wall from the ground up that serves to divide the area. It's kind of like a patio. This is more enclosed, kind of like a screened-in porch kind of idea. And this is just like, like a carport, where you would pull up your horse or your donkey and unload. Under here, kind of escape the elements, I guess, if it's raining or if it's sunny out. You have protection from the elements as you are taking your time unloading. Kind of like a loading dock, which would take some time to unload. Okay. So those are the different kinds of porticos. The sages taught in a baraita, a gatehouse, a portico, and a balcony with a staircase leading down to the courtyard have the adjoining 4 cubits for unloading. And so we don't have a picture of the gatehouse or the balcony. Okay, so a gatehouse, a portico, and a balcony with a staircase leading down to the courtyard have the adjoining 4 cubits for unloading. Even if 5 houses open onto the balcony, yeah, Arnie, go ahead.
Yeah, well, I sort of have a question about the units. Okay, I can't get my head around it sort of mathematically.
Yeah.
So, is it when they say cubits, that's a distance, not an
A
area,
cubit, a
right?
cubit is 1.5 feet.
Okay, so if you get a foot and a half beyond the door, the entrance, is
No,
that
so it's 4 cubits. It's 4 cubits. That's 6 feet.
okay? So 6 feet in front of the door, but do you get the entire area created by that 6 feet with the door?
Yes, so that's the picture up here. That's the picture right here. You see, it depends on the size of the door. So then you have this rectangle, well, this square in front of it, 4 by 4. Or if the door is 8 cubits long, then you have 8 cubits long, but 4 cubits depth into the courtyard. So you have,
Okay, so
no matter how long the doorway into the courtyard is, you have that length times the width into the courtyard of 4 cubits.
so here's my second question. Now that I
Yeah.
got that standing, so the picture that you just showed
Yes.
shows that the person that has the wider door
Yeah.
gets more area
Yeah.
than the person that has the smaller door. So then when you go to split the rest,
Yes.
okay, do you split it in such a way that when you add the two pieces together, about what each got, they would have this equal areas? Because that makes more sense to me, that you don't just
The rest of the area is equally divided. They take their entranceway area that would be mismatched, but the rest of the courtyard then is equally divided.
so that the person that has the wider door does in fact get more area.
Probably, yes.
Okay, because you could figure out a way that the way you divide the rest of it in that picture so that at the end of the day, they each got the same area. But
Oh, yeah,
see,
no. Now,
but
according to the Gemara, that's not the case.
not how they do.
The entrances determine, the number of entrances determine the extra area that one owner would get of the courtyard in order to have the requisite space needed for an entranceway into his home, for whatever purpose you're using that entranceway for, whether it's for animals that need to load and unload or whatever else.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Okay, so where did we go here? No, okay, so I think we're back up here. Okay. Okay, so yes. So the 4 cubits were granted so that the owner would have room for unloading his animal of its burden. Here, he can go inside the portico and unload. Rav Sheshet raises an objection from a baraita. Both gates of houses and gates of porticos have the adjoining 4 cubits for unloading. The Gemara answers, when that baraita is taught, it's specifically with regard to the portico of a study hall, which is closed and is not used for unloading burdens. The Gemara expresses surprise at this answer. It's obvious that this is the halacha governing the portico of the study hall, as it's a proper room. Rather, the Baraita is referring to a Roman portico, which is more than the portico of a study hall, but also not used for unloading. Okay, I think we had read that. The sages taught in a Baraita, a gatehouse, a portico, and a balcony with a staircase leading down to the courtyard have the adjoining 4 cubits for unloading. Even if 5 houses open onto the balcony, they only have 4 cubits in front of the entrance to the staircase that leads to the balcony. Right. So the staircase is leading down to the courtyard. So you take the staircase up, and then on the balcony, you have the different entrances to the homes up there. So it's kind of like if you picture like a two-floor motel kind of thing, then the people up top lose out by having any kind of area in front of their doorway for loading and unloading. The only place they can do that is in front of the staircase leading down to that's on the courtyard. Okay. Rabbi Yochanan asked Rabbi Yanai, does a chicken coop that also has a staircase have 4 cubits, or does it not have 4 cubits? Right, so if you've ever seen a chicken coop, there's a little ramp that leads down from the doorway of the chicken coop onto the ground, and the chickens know to learn how to climb up and down this little ramp. I don't know where I've seen this before, but I have seen chicken coops like that in big yards. And so I guess you'd have a chicken coop in a courtyard. So does that count as needing 4 cubits in front of it? Now, this ramp usually does not have, it's not, I mean, it could be this wide. So that's like even 6 inches wide. So Rabbi Yanai said to him, what's the reason of 4 cubits are granted? It's so that the owner will have room for unloading the burden of his animal. Here, this space is not needed as the chickens climb up to get into the coop and climb down to get out. No additional space is required for the owner to stand alongside them, right? You don't need to reserve 4 cubit space for the front of a chicken coop because the chickens know how to climb up and down themselves. Rava asked Rav Nachman, if a house is half roofed and half unroofed, does it have the adjoining 4 cubits, or does it not have the 4 cubits? Rav Nachman said to him, it does not have the 4 cubits. The Gemara comments, it's not necessary to state this halacha when the house's roofing is over the inside portion of the house, since it's possible for the owner to go inside and unload his animal, right? So you can unload your animal under the unroofed part of your house. Rather, even when the house's roofing is over the outside portion of the house, it's not given 4 cubits, as even in such a case, it's possible for the owner to go inside and unload his animal there. So there's a dispute as to whether you have a partially unroofed house, whether that owner needs the 4 cubits outside for the loading and unloading, when the owner can do it inside, since he kind of has his own built-in courtyard, since it's unroofed. Okay. Rav Huna asked Rav Ami, if one of the residents of an alleyway onto which several courtyards open wishes to alter his entrance to a different alleyway, that is, to make an entrance to his courtyard that will open onto a different alleyway, can the residents of the other alleyway prevent him from opening this entrance, or can they not prevent him from doing so? So let's see if there's a picture here of this. Here we go. Okay, so 5 courtyards open onto an alleyway. Here's the alleyway, and here are the 5 courtyards. Okay, so courtyard for this house, courtyard here, courtyard, courtyard, courtyard. So the question is, where is the other alleyway that he wants to open onto? Okay, so Rav Huna further asked, when a king issues a billeting order to the residents of a courtyard, obligating them to house his soldiers in their homes, is the burden divided according to the number of people in each household? Or is it divided according to the number of entrances that each house has opening into the courtyard? So that's interesting. So the soldiers would billet in a courtyard or even in a home. So what if you got an older man whose family has moved away or died, and so he's living in a house all by himself, and that is part of the courtyard, and another home in another courtyard has a family of 8 living in the house. Is it just based on entrances, like the family of 8 has to have 2 soldiers, and the family of 1 has to have 2 soldiers, or are the soldiers proportionately divided based on the number of residents in the house? Rabbi Ami said to him, it's divided according to the number of people in each household. The Gemara comments, that opinion is also taught in a Baraita. The dung in a courtyard, which the residents wish to use, is divided among them according to the number of entrances that open into the courtyard, whereas billeting is divided according to the number of people in each household. So dung is equally divided no matter how many people live in each home, but billeting is not equally divided. That's based on how much room is actually inside each house. Yes, Julian.
Do we now know where the original homeowners association came from?
That's right. Yeah.
I mean, it sounds like I said it to be humorous, but
no, but you're right.
Sounds like that's what it's about.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. So, people are left to their own devices to, be good neighbors. And then we all know this. There's always one neighbor who is extremely, rule oriented and by the book. That makes it very difficult for other neighbors to get along. And then homeowners associations are like too. I for the most part, my homeowners association is fine in my neighborhood. But I think I've mentioned this before. When I got new windows in my house, I had to get the more expensive windows that had like the dividers built into them to like make the window into different squares, because that's just the rule of the homeowners association, even though other homes in the neighborhood did not have those dividers in them. And they said, the rule of the homeowners association is you have to have them. You can take them out afterwards, but you have to have them. So it's ridiculous, the rules that homeowners associations come up with, but it is, in the end, it makes it easier. This way you don't get into fights with your neighbors. The homeowners association is the bigger place to take care of these things. So the same thing with the court.
I would actually argue that we've lived 30 years, 35 years in a community with no homeowners association. Nobody has parked their cars in their front yard.
Right. So you're lucky. You're lucky because there are some. In my neighborhood, there's a guy who's in a plumbing business, and he has his trucks parked in not only his driveway but on the street. So I don't care. It does look a little bit unsightly to have these construction vehicles parked in the neighborhood, but I don't care. But maybe other people in the neighborhood do care, and I haven't paid attention if there are rules like that. And there's also parking overnight rules and things like that. Like where my daughter lives in White Plains, I don't know why, but their residential area in White Plains, you're not allowed to keep a car parked on the street overnight. So I never heard of that in a residential area, not being allowed to keep a car on the street overnight. Makes it very, it's annoying for when you have visitors, but everybody in the neighborhood has an extremely long driveway that has room for like 3 or 4 cars to park on it along the length of it. I don't know, different neighborhoods, different rules, and whatever it is. You want to try to avoid going to court And here, I think the rabbis are also trying to come up with some kind of system so that people don't have to end up coming to court, that people can kind of make do on their own. And here are some of the general ground rules for doing that. Yeah.
Montgomery County has laws
Uh-huh.
that will affect that plumber in your neighborhood.
Right. So I guess, if it really bothered people, they could contact somebody in Montgomery County about that. But then, word could get back to the neighbor, like who is the one who reported me and all that, and who wants to worry about, whether that plumber is a sane person or an insane person and might might damage property. Who knows? I don't know. But all this stuff, it goes back to ancient times, and these are some basic ways in which neighbors can get along. And just the way that properties were built, the neighbors shared courtyards, and this is some way in which you can share a courtyard or put a dividing wall up so you don't have to share it all, and you have your own kind of private property. Okay. Rav Huna says, if one of the residents of an alleyway wishes to close off an area adjacent to his entrance, that is, to build a structure in the alleyway adjacent to the entrance to his courtyard, the residents of the alleyway can prevent him from doing so. This is because it will increase the way for them, since they will have to circumvent the structure when going to and from their homes. The Gemara raises an objection from a Baraita. If 5 courtyards open onto an alleyway, and that's the picture here, 5 courtyards opening onto an alleyway, all the residents of the alleyway may use that part of the alleyway that faces the entrance to the outermost courtyard, and the residents of the outermost courtyard may use only that part of the alleyway adjacent to its own entrance. And similarly, the residents of the other courtyards may use that part of the alleyway that faces the second courtyard, that is, the one next to the outermost courtyard, and the residents of the second courtyard may use that part of the alleyway adjacent to its own entrance, and they may use that part of the alleyway facing the outermost courtyard. So, I'm not sure I'm understanding the usage here based on the picture here. Like, I guess this guy, there's a break in the wall here, and a break. So there's breaks in the wall all along here, and then there are entrances from each home into the alleyway. But I'm not sure about the sharing here that the Gemara is raising. But let's keep on going. The Gemara continues, the outcome is that the residents of the innermost courtyard may use that part of the alleyway adjacent to its own entrance, and they may use that part of the alleyway facing each and every other courtyard as well. According to this analysis, it should be permitted for the owner of the innermost courtyard to close off the area in front of his courtyard, since he is the only one who has permission to use it. The Gemara answers, it's a dispute between Tanaim, rabbis at the time of the Mishnah, as it's taught in a Baraita. If one of the residents of an alleyway wishes to alter his entrance to a different alleyway, the residents of the other alleyway can prevent him from doing so. If there had been an entrance there beforehand, which is now sealed, and he wishes to open it, the residents of the other alleyway cannot prevent him from doing so. This is a statement of Rabbi Yehuda Anasi. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, if there are 5 courtyards which open onto an alleyway, the residents of all the courtyards may all use the alleyway with each other. The Gemara expresses surprise about this last ruling. Courtyards, who mentioned anything about them? Why are they mentioned, considering that the Braita is not discussing the halacha of courtyards? The Gemara answers, Braita is incomplete, and this is what it's teaching. Additionally, if there are 5 courtyards which open onto an alleyway, the residents of all the courtyards may all use the area facing the outermost courtyard, and the residents of the outermost one may use only the area facing their own entrance. This is the statement of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. Rabbi Shimon ben Elazar says, if there are 5 courtyards which open onto an alleyway, the residents of all the courtyards may all use the alleyway. Okay. The Gemara directs the discussion to the details mentioned in the Braita. The master said, if there had been an entrance there beforehand that is now sealed and he wishes to open it, the residents of the other alleyway cannot prevent him from doing so. Let's just see, there's background. Here we go. Sealed entrance with doorposts intact. Sealed entrance with doorpost removed. So this is part, like it looks like a wall now. It's like seamless. And here, there's still like doorposts there. So it still looks like a doorway. Okay. This was taught only when he did not break its doorpost. That is, when the doorpost remained intact, even after the entrance was sealed. But if he sealed the entrance and broke its doorpost, thereby demonstrating that the entrance had been completely negated, the residents of the other alleyway can prevent him from opening a new entrance. Abaye said to Rava, a baraita is taught which supports you. A house that has a sealed entrance still has the 4 cubits adjoining that entrance because the entrance can be reopened. If one broke its doorpost and sealed the entrance is completely negated, and it does not have the 4 cubits adjoining it. So, if you seal it off completely and break the doorpost, that means that you're not intending to use that as an entrance anymore, and therefore you don't have the right to claim the 4 cubits in front of that entrance anymore. There is a similar distinction with regard to the halachot of ritual impurity. There is a halacha that a house in which there is a corpse transmits ritual impurity only through its doorways. The Baraita continues, a grave whose entrance is sealed does not render all its surroundings ritually impure. The ritual impurity extends only to the area opposite the entrance. But if one broke its doorpost and sealed it, it's no longer considered an entrance, and the grave renders all its surroundings ritually impure because impurity that has no egress bursts from all sides. Similarly, a house in which there is a corpse that has a sealed entrance does not render all its surroundings ritually impure. But if one broke its doorposts, it's no longer considered an entrance, and the corpse renders all of its surroundings ritually impure. Okay, so just the idea of this ritual impure part just highlights the idea of an entrance. If the entrance is sealed, but the doorposts are there, it's still considered an entrance. Like there could be a time that entrance could be reopened. But if the doorposts have been broken and taken away, then it's clear that it's not to be considered an entrance anymore. Okay, we're going to stop here for today, and we'll next week, next Sunday, we will not have class. It's President's Weekend, and I'm going to be going away for a couple of days, leaving early in the morning. So no class next Sunday. We'll have class again then on the 23rd. Okay, and I'll send a reminder email about that. Okay, so have a good rest of the day, everybody. Take care and go Eagles.
Good luck.
Yeah, take care all.
Thank you.